Hey everyone, welcome to Reflections, the wisdom of Edgar Cayce. We're coming to you courtesy of our broadcasting partner, moretalk.tv. Today on the show, we are digging into the endless ARE archives to enjoy together a lecture from one of my favorite Cayce scholars, is J. Everett Irion. In his presentation, J. Everett Irion will discuss the topic of forgiveness from the Cayce perspective, a very powerful tool for healing. For those who are unfamiliar with J. Everett Irion, he was a quiet but powerful force in the background of the organization that actually grew up around the wisdom that came through Edgar Cayce. He's a certified public accountant by training, but Everett came to the ARE to actually become the business manager and treasurer of the organization. As it turned out, Everett did much more than just the accounting. He had a lively, inquiring mind and a fascination with the information that came through the Cayce readings. He enjoyed sharing the information with everyone, as well as he did individual counseling sessions. He, of course, lectured at the ARE, and his books include Edgar Cayce on the Revelation and Vibrations. You can download the 40-day forgiveness prayer that is inspired by J. Everett Irion's work at edgarcayce.org/prayer. I hope y'all enjoy J. Everett Irion's presentation on forgiveness.
Well, we're going to have J. Everett Irion with us this hour to talk about 40 days to forgiveness. Irion came to ARE from Texas in the early 1960s. He was treasurer and remained treasurer for many years. He's been on the board of trustees. He still has his office on the second floor. There's ground floor, then first floor, second floor of the old hospital building. I tell this to you because time and again when conferees come to ARE and they want help with their dreams, they go to Irion. And I can guarantee you there will be help. A different perspective, a different insight. He likes to work with puns and dreams, and there are always puns and dreams. He's wonderful to share time with and to talk about dreams with, and many other things. For many years, he taught a class on the Revelation here at ARE. Is there one ongoing? Will there be in the fall? Not this fall, but he has had that for years and years. He has a book on the Revelation. Donna, I have a couple books on my desk, Vibrations and the Revelation. Would you bring those? I wanted to show the conferees those. He worked for years on the theory of vibration and came up with a beautiful book on vibration. He has a weekly column, or a column in Venture Inward, the bi-monthly magazine, so all of you can read that column, and that's always a good perspective on dreams. This is the book on Revelation, and this is the book on vibration. Those are both available in the bookstore. When will your book, Why Do We Dream, when will that be out? Do you know yet? Probably next spring. I'll have a book on dreams, so that's going to be good news for all of us. I dreamed once upon a time, several years ago, that just this phrase, Irion, means platinum. And so I usually call him by his last name, and that's very acceptable to him. He usually says, Meredith, what does that mean to you? And I said, well, platinum is of more value than gold. Yea, much fine gold. So, J. Everett Irion.
Thank you, Meredith. Good morning. I feel very humble trying to add or trying to pick up what Jim said to you people. He got right to the heart of what I'm going to talk about. So I hope that if we don't conflict with ideas, or I don't mess you up with the ideas you got from Jim. Because there's one thing I want to start with. He mentioned those of you who would like to live a spiritual life. I say nuts. You are living a spiritual life. Your whole life is nothing but spiritual. You don't have to want to live a spiritual life. You are living a spiritual life. In whatever spirit you do, whatever you do, that's spiritual. So that's a phrase that we get caught on sometimes and think that we need to live a spiritual life. And I hope I can change some of your people's ideas about some of the things that we are caught in, so that we may, if we will begin to look beyond ourselves and reach a spiritual life that we can live with, we can be happier. I feel honored to follow Jim in his presentation, but there are some things that I could not add to him, but would help me to express my thoughts. You know, there's an old saying that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. How many of you ever heard it? How many of you ever had a teacher appear? Thank you. I love that because you didn't. Can you name the teacher that appeared? Let me give you a different idea. So, if that statement is true, I would ask you, who is the teacher? Did you ever think about that? Or what is the teacher? We jump at the first one. We know a teacher, he taught me, or she taught me. But is it necessarily a who, or could it be a what? In fact, it is none of these. It's not a what. It's not a who. But always it is the body, soul, that is the teacher. It brings us what we need to learn. And what we need to learn we call experience. So experience is the teacher for all of us. Ideas are what we learn from others. It may change our thoughts, but really the only thing that is, as far as teaching, is experience. You cannot learn from others unless you experience it. In order to do that, we have to look at what happens to us when we live. We have to examine the body. I said body-mind. That has experiences. So we must look at the body-mind. There are two minds in the body. The conscious mind works here, the unconscious mind works here. There are two people working in us. Beside male and female, there is a personal thing that works over here, the personality. This is the spiritual part. The part that tells us what we do and how we work in symbols, a language of the dreams that we must get acquainted with in our life. But we don't do that. We object to our dreams, what they tell us, because I don't understand them. So it's important that we begin to understand. So, but the dreams, the body, mind, wants to work with facts. This mind works with truths. So the truths are presented to us. And when we can understand the truth behind our dreams, then it makes sense. They're all one. This mind and this mind are in harmony with one another. So when we can begin to see that the unconscious mind is my life, then we may want to pay more attention to what happens at the unconscious level and not get caught in what we want. Because our trouble is that we want what we want. And that started with Eve. Eve wanted. So that is part of us now. That's her legacy to us. And we want what we want. You know, the 23rd Psalm says that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You know, people don't like that a bit. So many people didn't like it that the latest versions of the Bible says, the Lord is my shepherd, he will supply all my needs. When they forgot, they didn't understand the word want. And we want what we want. And we have a right to want what we want. So we live by our wants, not what we like to experience. Not necessarily. But we want what we want and pay no attention to what this brain is trying to get us to pay attention to. Now, how does it pay attention? With vibrations that come to us through our five senses. We see with our eyes, do we? We hear with our ears, do we? We taste with our tongue and taste buds, do we? Do we really? What happens? No, you do not see anything. All that reaches you are electrical impulses caused by light that helps you to remember something. Memory has to be built up. From babyhood, thoughts come into the baby's mind of things that he doesn't understand. But it's a learning process that we stand and live absolutely alone by ourselves. We do not live with others. We live with our reactions to others. But we live alone in this body. We don't see anything. We don't hear anything. Sound is transformed into electrical impulses that reach the brain, reminding us of something we know. The same way with taste. All of our five senses are like this. So we have five senses. And we have a sixth sense in two forms. We think we have a sixth sense? No, we have two sixth senses. The sixth sense that is psychic within us, where we know something and we don't know how we know it, but it's just a sixth sensing of something. It's called the psychic sense. How we look beyond what is happening. Or we know something's going to happen while we're conscious. That's the sixth sense working through this brain. But then we have another sixth sense, according to Edgar Cayce, that works and helps us to analyze to bring us what our life is really about in our dreams. But we don't like that. We like to know what we're dealing with. We're taught, the dreams don't amount to anything by children, and the children grow up, and the teacher for children is the child's parents, not by what the parent says, but primarily by what the parent does. The model that the child goes by is what he learns from the parents. So that becomes the character that he takes on, the child. But parents don't think about them being the model for the teacher. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it's good. But it's like this. A woman was working very hard in the kitchen one day, and somebody knocked on the door. So she said to her child, "Go tell him I'm not here." So the child did exactly that. Says, "Mama said to tell you she's not here." The child obeyed the parent, and the parent got huffy and gave the child a spanking. The child learned never to say anything that her mother said, and she'd have to say it her own way. So our wants get us into trouble. Now let's look at something else, and this is the judgment of how we judge each other. And Jesus says, when you judge, you're judged already. I used to think that God was one of the most horrible creatures ever was. He was so busy keeping track of my things that I did, but he's got to keep track of all things that everybody did. He simply had to be too busy to record all the things that I did. When I got grown and began to think for myself, I figured out this, that when I judge you, I know something about you, don't I? And when I judge you, I have judged you from what I know about you. Not from what you know about you, but from what I know about you, because I have to have some ideas about you in order to judge you. So I express that judgment. But when I do that, I have judged me and not you. What did Jesus say? When ye judge, ye are judged already. I have judged me, and it's impossible for me to judge anybody else. Because if I do, I have to judge my concepts of you. So why say that I'm judging you? I cannot do it. It's impossible. I have judged my concepts. So let's look at some things that we do that are contrary to what we've been taught. We judge each other. It's the most useless thing we do. The most useful thing we could do, is to recognize that we can't judge another, so why do we fight with one another? We judge each other, and we fight each other, and shun each other. So we judge us, and we can never judge somebody else. Oh, we've been taught to judge. This is one place the parents fall down. They do not teach us how we ought to judge, because they teach us not to judge. For when we judge, we are judging us, not God. We. So let's don't put it on God. We have done it. So what do we learn from others? As models. We learn from models. Jesus came to earth not to save people, but to be a model by which they could learn about themselves. So as model, he came as a model that we would follow in his footsteps. The model. He never judged, never condemned, but we judge and condemn all the time. Anybody here who does not judge and condemn? I hoped I'd find a handful of saints' hands go up. Really, we judge because we don't want to accept responsibility. But accepting responsibility is what life is all about. In the conscious mind, we reject what people do to us and reject what happens. But the unconscious mind, the soul mind, will bring us what we need, whether we want it or whether we don't. Why? Because the soul, with the will, brings us exactly what we need throughout a life in earth. Because, well, let's put it this way. Edgar Cayce said, the soul, with its companion, the will, must return to the Father. The soul, with its companion, the will. We think we have a will. We do not have a will. We latch on to the will that is a companion to us. That brings up a new idea, a different idea, about us having free will. We have the will to choose to do our will or God's will. But how many of you recognize what God's will is in your life? Do you ever think about it? How do you recognize God's will in your life? You ever recognize your will? Oh, we can recognize that, can't we? It gets it into trouble, doesn't it? But what's God's will? We say it, we want to do God's will. What do we mean by that? If we will mean that, we will recognize that the creative forces in nature bring us exactly what we need, not what we want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So nature will bring us what we need and shepherd us into what we need. But that's the way we can get back to God. By going with what God's will brings to us. The things that happen to us. That's hard to take. But it also affects us in our relationships one-to-one wherever we are. But in doing this, in trying to evaluate each other and judge each other, we build us. The child begins to build an identity, which is not seated yet until the child is between 7 and 9 years old, to identify himself as being a person. The child must grow to that. So all the more reason we ought to grow in learning how to not judge another, but how to accept what happens as being a guide, God's will. You can't impose that on a child. He has to learn it. But he learn it through models. If we will be the model that the child would learn. In doing this, we build our personality. We latch on to ideas and we act certain ways. This becomes the personality that I show to each other, that I show to others, to everybody. My personality is built then by me, by accepting certain ways to act and react. God doesn't do it. God's forces do it because the mind is the force of God. The spirit in the universe is the creative force that builds what we need. We latch on to what we have been told to do, and therefore we actually build the personality that is in us. We latch on to ideas and we build them. They become concrete, ways that we hold on to, facts of life that we take as being guides for us. A way to live, a personality, a way we think, a way we worship. Everything that relates to our personality is caused by us. And nobody can tell you you got it somewhere else. It may be an influence that you latched on to, but you are the one who handled it. So you are the creator of you, not God. You are the creator of your personality. And that's something that people don't want to look at. Am I a hard teacher? No, your experience is a hard teacher. But we live alone with what we have built. As I said a while ago, we build us, and nobody is responsible but us. So we have to meet what we have done in life, after life, because all life is one life. It is not other lives. There is only one life. It goes in and out, like going in and out of this room, or in and out of this home, in and out. But life is one life that was given you in the beginning. And that life is the one that amounts to saying, not this life in this time frame that we talk about. But we think that's important, and that's what we build on. But it is important what kind of character we build, for we are responsible for us, not God. So why do we pray to God? As somebody said, well, we pray to God because God says pray to Him, and we pray to God for what we want. Or we actually, in our prayers, are telling God what's wrong with us and how He ought to handle it, aren't we? Don't we really tell God what we want Him to bring to us? So you're trying to get God to tell us. We want to tell Him what we want, so He'll bring it to us. That's not right. So we build us in this life and every life. And every life is a living now. All of my past lives are living in me right now. what am I going to do with them? Little things that happen to me. Maybe they happened 100 years ago or 10,000 years ago. As Edgar Cayce reading says, 10,000 years ago you did this, and this is what you're living with now. You see, we bring all of our past spiritual actions into life now, because it's memories. Where we fell down before, now we have a chance to meet it with what happens to us now. So what happens to us is the spiritual life bringing to us how we built a wrinkle in the spiritual flow of the creative energy in the universe. Now, is it just us? Or let's think a little bit bigger. I'll give you an illustration. Edgar Cayce said that we put the sunspots on the sun. How do we do that? How does the sun know what we have done? Can you think a little bit bigger? You're bigger than what you think you are? Is it possible? Is it possible that what we do to each other affects the sun? If it affects the sun, would it not affect the stars? We study astrology for its effect on us, but what's our effect on on astrology? Actually, Edgar Cayce says we go between planetary influences in between lives in the earth plane. This is just one plane of knowledge, of learning. So what effect are we having in our reactions on the stars which we believe will help us? You see, can you think a little bit bigger? You're bigger than what you think you are? Is it possible to say that I am great? As Jim said, you're all right. Can you believe that you're all right and playing a part, not in just personal relationship, but playing a part in the total universal law? Can you at least entertain it? I'm not going to ask you to believe it, but look at it. Look at what we are doing, not just to people, but to the creative forces that's all around us. Look what we have done to the ecology in the United States. Haven't we participated in some way? Isn't it? And if we put the sunspots on the sun, don't that influence reach the galaxies? How do you think you see a galaxy unless it is supposed to be seen? To get you an idea. A galaxy of stars? Isn't that the universal intelligence bringing to us a greater intelligence than what we can think beyond? It could be, couldn't it? We gather together in groups, in cities, in towns, in countries. Isn't that a picture of a galaxy? A whole bunch of stars together going around and around, just like we do. You see, there's much more to life than what we think we are. It's not just personal experiences. Life is throughout the universe. And we live that life that we have built in our little consciousness from life to life. There is something greater that's going on within us and through my unconscious mind. But no, I've got to believe it. I've got to see it to believe it. So what we do, what we think is right, is our opinion. What we think is right is simply our opinion of what's right and how other people ought to do. So I'm bringing you those things now in order to lay the foundation for what I really want to talk about. And I want to talk about this 40-day prayer and how we can use that. And I've talked to you, I've laid the foundation for you to look at this as a way of life. And it should not be just one day, one person. We should learn to pray. It's not so hard to pray to another person. In the early days of America, people used it, especially certain groups of people used it. I pray to you to do this. Common. But no, we got intelligent and we stopped saying, I pray to you. We threw out something that we should live by. I pray to you. So, how can we begin to pray to others unless there is a need? How often do we do things for other people or do to them without thinking of the result? We all have personal relationships. This is what I want to talk about today. But something that you can learn to work with. We have personal problems with other people. So what can we do about that? Husband and wife have problems together. Mother and daughter, father and son, through the whole thing. Especially mother and mother-in-laws. Who doesn't? Or fathers and daughter-in-laws. Same deal. So families grow up and scatter, and you have husbands and wives that don't fit into what the child grows up with. So the child is faced with trying to get along with two sets of parents. And they don't know how to do it. So how can we begin to, as we begin to judge another, how can we stop judging another and let it be a growth experience? We've been taught to pray, but I say don't forget about praying to God. Why? Because you are God's life. The spiritual life. You are a spirit. So why pray to God when you are that spirit? Outside yourself? No, I'm praying to God. Bring it down to me. So let's look at something that we can live with. Very practical manner. And I would tell you a story about how I developed this prayer. A long time ago, I thought we ought to certainly be thankful to whatever happens to us. One story, a man who lives in Washington, D.C., had a boss that he could not get along with. And he came here one summer, and I said, be thankful to this man. When you're tired of being thankful to him enough, you'll say it to him. So he tried to be thankful to this man whom he didn't like. And he said, all of a sudden one day I noticed he was watching me. And finally he kept up for 6 months. And finally he called me to him and says, after work, and he says, listen, why are you doing what you're doing? I don't know what you're doing, but I've been watching you. And I don't know what you're doing. He said, I'm just being thankful to you. He says, you have taught me a lot. You have taught me so much I can't even put it into words. But I want to now say thank you, and I mean it. These two men became the best of friends who had hated each other. You can do that too with anybody that you don't like. Just say thank you. How many of you have refused to say thank you when somebody did you a good turn? Just a little bit of turn. Did you ever do that? Did not say thank you? Yes, we do it. We don't take time to say thank you. So why not? It doesn't cost anything. So when we begin to have problems with people, then things can help us to get with and do things differently in that situation. And they'll bring it to us. Sometimes it happens in dreams. Problems that we need to meet. Problems that we formed a long time ago, as some of you talked about this morning and yesterday, certainly appear. What is it that is bringing this to mind? That greater consciousness, not just an individual thing, but from the universe, bringing to our minds what to do. Just this morning, a lady said to me, I had a funny dream last night. My cat, who had died and had to be put away, had a horrible experience before it died. But last night, the cat came in my room, came home. I was so happy this cat had come home. And suddenly, she waked up, though. And no, it was just a dream. Why would I do that? From 15 years ago, she'd had this cat. The cat came into her dream. The cat's a symbol of karma, an idea, not meat. That's the symbol at the adrenal level. Memories, karma, that needed to be met. So this cat comes into her dream, reminding her of something that happened 15 years ago that she needed to handle. And she recognized, in talking to me, that this needed to be handled. And she's going to try to do it. These things come up in mind like this. So the greater mind than ours is working on us, if we would but listen. So this is the way, saying thank you that I got to saying what I did. What led me to develop this 40-day prayer. A man came to me. We had a dream week here, and we were talking about repetitive dreams, and this man stood in line to get to my office. And he says, I have a repetitive dream, and I'm going to die. I know I'm going to die. I asked him to tell me the dream. He says, I always go back to the house where I used to live. And the house is empty. I walk all around it and look in the windows. Everything's locked up. But there's nothing in the house. And I stand back and look at that house and say to myself, why am I here? And then I hear something behind me. And I turn and look, and there is a lamb, black lamb. Now, I know what the lamb is, the white lamb. The white lamb is Christ, but the black lamb has to be Satan. The doctors tell me that I have not more than 6 months to live. What am I going to do? I asked him what had happened in that house. He said, that's where I divorced my wife. I said, can you go to her and say thank you to her and thank her for helping you? Thank her for all she did to you? He says, no, I can't do that. I said, why can't you do that? He said, she's dead. I says, are you here at the conference? He says, yes. Don't you believe in reincarnation? Yes. Don't you believe that your wife is somewhere in consciousness? Why, sure. I said, can't you pray to her? Yeah, I could do that. Then you pray to her. Doesn't make any difference where you are, where she is. You pray to her this little prayer. Thank you for all you've done to me. Forgive me for all I've done to you. And then if it's going to work, you have to do it the same identical prayer to yourself. Thank you for all you've done to me. Forgive me for all I've done to you. That simple little prayer. The man says, yeah, I can do that. And he got up and walked out. A year later, I got a letter from that man. He says, I have had the best year of my life. From the moment I left your office, I felt like I was healed. I have been through 3 different clinics, and all the doctors say there's nothing wrong. I'm healthier than I have ever been in my life. I've been completely healed. Do you see why that I would say, let's make this thing a living thing within us? Let's try to say thank you to whatever happens to us, not just between when we've got problems with others. It'll work in any situation. It happens. It works. But you have to be careful that to try to make it work by being faithful to that. So this 40-day prayer is you're working through the 4 creative forces within you that built you what you are, with the gonads, the cells of Leydig, the adrenals, which is karma, and memories, and through the what we be here. Now, that's the thymus gland level. For how many of you, tell me, how do you point to yourself? How do you point to yourself? Everybody points here. You do it instinctively. We're not told to do it. It's you. So the you has been built by the creative forces within you that created every idea that you have and latched on to as a way of life. That's pictured in the vibration book and the revelation book. What happens as we work with the creative forces in us and how we build us? So can we change our building within us to be thankful for the forces that we have used wrongly? So yes, we do this 40 days. Why? Because Moses spent 40 years getting out of the promised land, and he had to spend another 40 years. It rained on Noah for 40 days and nights. Jesus spent 40 days and nights in the wilderness, and here he was faced with Satan. Satan came and tempted him. 3 different ways, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. Then he said to Satan, "Get thee behind me, Satan. There is where we make a mistake. Get thee behind me, Satan." All the preachers say, he said, that means go away. Get out of my life. It's not. That's completely misunderstood. Why? Go back and read Job. You see that Job and his fellows came together to worship on the Sabbath day. And Satan came too. And he said, God said, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "I came to worship." Now he says, but Satan says, and he said to Satan, "Have you done what I did ask you to do to test Job?" No, I wouldn't do that. I know you're a fierce God. I haven't got the courage to do that. He says, "Go and do what you will to Saul, to Job, but don't touch his soul." In essence, that's what he asked him. So he is a helpmeet to us. There's a great star fell from heaven in the Revelation, who had the keys to heaven and hell. So this great star, great consciousness, comes down to earth that have the keys to hell. That's us. We can live in hell or we can live in heaven. Just a few words. I would ask you to try this prayer if you have a problem with anybody. Anybody here who does not have a problem with somebody else? Isn't every problem worth handling? Everyone. We have problems in our families, don't we? We all have problems of some kind because we are the makers of us. We must learn life after life after life to make the kind of life we ought to live. But let's take it where we are and depend a little bit more on this greater consciousness that is the total universe, that will help us if we will allow it. So we have to make a stand at thank you for helping me. For everything bad that has happened to you, when you look at it in retrospect, it's always good. I don't care what it is. So this looking back at yourself means you have passed a point in consciousness, a growth in experience. So if we will be thankful to whomever it is with this prayer, let's do it one. I've had people want to do 12. I've got 12 people in my family that really hard to get along with. Can't I pray for 12 of these people at once? I said, no. You got to learn. You do it one person at a time. I don't care if you have 2 people in your family. Don't do it. Must do it 40 days for one person, 40 days for another person. If you got 3 people, 40 days for another person. That means 120 days. You want to do it? One girl said, yes, I'm going to do it. So we learn then, it becomes a part of us, a part of our personality, and then we will not hold against others and know it's us. And we cannot judge another. So we will quit judging and accept them as they are, and you have more friends than you could ever think of when you accept everybody as being your friend. They are your friends, regardless of the way we've been taught. Couldn't this change not just a life, but the way we stand in the community? It's a simple thing, but didn't Jesus just come to the simple things? Do the simple things? He didn't do big things. People wanted him to perform miracles. We cannot perform miracles. We can allow them to happen, because life is one life. Whatever, time is nothing but the measuring of our understanding. It's a measuring rod that we are taught. Time doesn't except to us as we measure our consciousness. It's a measuring rod that we learn about. We're taught time. You all had to learn to count time. All you're learning is counting the shadow on the clock as it goes around. Time is a measuring of our understanding. By us, not somebody else. Space is the measuring of our relationships one to another. Trouble between people, measuring of our understanding of our relationships. Patience is the measure of our understanding of our responsibility for what brings to us. That's out of Edgar Cayce's book. So patience is the measure of our understanding of our responsibility for whatever happens to us. Space is the measure of our understanding of relationships of all kinds. Time is the measure of our understanding of me. This may seem a little far-fetched, some of it. I hope it does. Until we begin to think a little bit differently, we're not going to change anyway. Wouldn't we all like to be better? Are we, any of us, really satisfied with who we be? Dreams can help us what we be. Dreams are marvelous things if we will latch on to them. They bring us the truth about us. Like a girl who came and had a dream. She felt something in her hand. She opened her hand and here were 2 bumblebees. End of dream. When I heard that, I laughed. It was one of the most beautiful dreams I ever saw in my life. What was it? What is the truth presented? The truth, dreams will present truth to us. What was the truth presented here? How many of you know it? Let me see the hands. You don't know that you know it, but everybody knows it. All of you know it. What is the truth presented? Every one of you know it. To be or not to be? Don't you all know it? All right. To be or not to be was the truth that was presented. But you have to look at the truth. Compare the truth that's presented in your life. So it uses truths that we can know about. As we were presented with a key. This is a terrific symbol. I've been presented keys by presidents of the United States, and I didn't know what they meant. I still don't know. But you have a key to understanding. So the keys or the bumblebees are symbols of our understanding, what we be. You may have a few questions. I'll be glad to try to answer questions. We have about 8 minutes before we need to stop. Yes?
I'd like to share something concerning this forgiveness prayer. One of my friends had recommended this to another lady, and she says, well, I don't think this is going to work, but I'll try it just to prove it to you. And she tried it, and at the end of the 40 days, she was asked, well, now, do you see a change in this relationship? And she said, well, he's no different than he ever was. But she asked the husband if he saw any difference. And he said, she is so much easier to live with.
There is a beautiful illustration. She didn't see any difference, but he saw a great difference. People have come here and did this prayer for 30 days. Some people have moved here and worked here. I know several people have come at the end of 40 days, the husband shows up, says, let's try it again. I must take it back up with me. It works. Yes?
Did you say that we were supposed to say it to ourselves? Did you say that?
Yes. You say the prayer to yourself. Both. It's one prayer, but two ways. One to your antagonist, your husband, and one to yourself. Same identical prayer. That way you put yourself on the same basis with your husband.
I don't really understand, if you say it to yourself, how you're using it. I just don't understand that.
There are copies of this that are available. They'll be on the table. Would you, and the lady back there has them, any of you would like to have these, they're here for you to pick up and take home with you. It will tell you exactly what to do. Would you bring me a copy of that, please?
I guess I don't understand the dynamic. I'm talking to myself, and I'm saying, thank you for all you've done to me, and then forgive me for all I've done to you. It seems like a schizophrenic kind of...
This is why I say, pray to your unconscious name. Pray to your middle name. And to your husband's middle name. I'm going to put your husband in there. You pray to your husband, but use his middle name. That way it will reach the unconscious mind. And then you pray to your unconscious mind by using your middle name. So you in effect, split yourself into two people, one conscious and one unconscious, which you are in reality, the conscious and the unconscious. So you pray to this mind, the unconscious mind, and to your mind. The identical prayer, putting yourself on the same basis with your husband. So you pray the identical prayer to your husband.
Which is the I, the unconscious mind or the conscious mind then?
The I that you're talking to me with is the conscious mind. The unconscious mind is the one that you work with in your dreams. But that is representative of the soul mind. Because that's the activity of the soul you get through this brain and not through this brain. So that's the reason to use the unconscious name, if possible. Yes?
When you're saying this, you have to fully believe it. Like, I have a little difficulty. I don't know if I can't really say I'm fully thankful for everything, let's say, this person's done for me. I probably still feel some resentment if I'm realizing.
You cannot be fully thankful for everything that person has done to you. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'd have to grow to reach that stage.
Let's try the prayer on one person. Is it one person in your life? but let it be all. Thank you for all you've done to me. Forgive me for all I've done to you. And then you do it to your own self. Put yourself on the same basis. Because, like I said about judging, you have judged yourself, but you put it on somebody else. And he's done the same thing. So let's get it on the same basis. Thank you for all you've done to me. Forgive me for all I've done to you. That way, you're not trying to lord it over somebody. You got it on the same basis. Thank you, forgive me. This whole idea is based on what Jesus said about love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul and all thy mind. If there is another, it is love thy neighbor as thyself. I have not learned to be able to do the commandment that Jesus gave. I can't do it. But I can try the second one. And this is what this whole prayer is based on, that second command. If there's another, love thy neighbor as thyself. Does that help?
Are you saying, as you say it and do it every day, you'll feel it more?
You'll feel it. It will probably take you at least 5 to 7 days before you begin to mean it. But you will mean it then. By the 20th day, you'll know it's going to work. One girl wrote me back a letter, said, I tried it. On the 20th day, everything worked fine, but I went ahead with my 40 days anyway. I didn't trust the 20th day. But it works beautiful.
So you start to understand it, and it starts to have more meaning for you?
That's right. That's right. It has a meaning that you didn't expect to find. The total relationship. But nobody can tell you that but you. Because it's based on your experiences.
For someone who doesn't have a middle name, is there some other steps that you can take?
If they do not have a middle name, use the surname. If they're called by the first name, use the surname. Yes.
What has to do with that quote that you said? He said, time measures understanding of me. Faith measures understanding of others. What does patience measure?
Your understanding of your responsibility for whatever happens to you. Yes.
If you want to use this prayer for yourself, to forgive yourself
Mm-hmm.
and get along better with yourself, love yourself more, do it for 40 days,
Yes.
just by
Yes.
using your middle name?
By using your middle name and then your conscious name. Yes. You can also use this if something is wrong with you physically. In other words, if there's something wrong with your liver, pray to your liver and use your middle name. Same way.
Could you give an example for me?
An example, a lady, a young girl, had a heart problem.
No, I don't mean that way, sir. I mean, I believe that this is going to work. That's not a problem. So you don't need, to show me that she improved her heart, but show me how to do it. Demonstrate.
Say the exact prayer.
My name is Jean. So I would say...
Eugene,
Jean.
what's wrong with you that you want to call?
Well, I would like to love myself more. Or
Self, Miss Self, I want you to pray. Miss Self, I'm praying to you.
Okay.
Jean, I'm praying to you. Miss Self is the first one. Self, and Jean is the second one. You split yourself. Miss Self is here. You don't know her. So Self, this will do it. Our time is up. I'm sorry, but I can't answer all your questions. But you've been a good audience. Thank you. Those of you...
I hope everyone enjoyed J. Everett Irion's presentation on forgiveness from, of course, the Cayce perspective. To download the 40-day forgiveness prayer, don't forget you can visit edgarcayce.org/prayer. And on behalf of everyone here hard at work at the Association for Research and Enlightenment, and of course moretalk.tv, I'm your host Brenton Bickerstaff, reminding you that we are all windows for the one light to shine through into the material realm. Whether less or more light enters your world, it is truly up to you. I encourage all of our listeners to always strive to keep your unique version of the one light shining bright for everyone to see. Thanks for tuning in to Reflections, everyone, and I'll see you next week. And now it's time for the Thought for the Day here on Reflections. And joining us for the Thought for the Day is Dr. Bill Austin. Bill, thank you so much for joining us on Reflections today.
Thank you for having me, Brent. Always a pleasure to be here.
Of course, honored to have you. And if you can go ahead and read the Thought for the Day today for our listeners.
Thank you, I shall. This comes from reading. This thought comes from the reading 1977-1. For as has been given, it is not all of life to live, nor yet all of death to die. For life and death are one, and only those who will consider the experience as one may come to understand or comprehend what peace indeed means. This is really, an interesting thought. Recently, I've had several friends pass on, so I've given this more thought. Sometimes when we feel like, oh yeah, I've got this life and death thing down, I've got my own concept of this. And then you start, losing some close friends. You start thinking, is that really true? Are we spirit, or are we a body that dies? And the Cayce readings keep coming back to, we're not this body. There's more to this life than what we see. There is the soul, there is the spirit, there is the continuity of life. And he talked about death being stepping through another door, into another realm. But there's still a consciousness there. There's still a development there as we really start to become one with that divine nature on the inside. And the closer we get to that, the more we awaken to that, the more I think we can appreciate, this statement that says it's not all of life to live, nor yet all of death to die, for they are one. I find it an interesting one to ponder with. And I think the Cayce readings really give us a good foundation of how to approach that.
Right. Absolutely. It's this one's interesting for a number of reasons. I would imagine at the time that this one came up, just I think it's well known that Cayce struggled with the karma and reincarnation aspect when it first came up in the reading, because he had a traditional Christian upbringing that didn't necessarily include all the details of that. So this I would imagine might have been a little difficult for him to kind of digest as well. It's a really interesting one. This one for me brings up this personal connection of nature. It always makes me think of nature, only because the cycle of life and death is blatantly obvious in nature. The more time you spend in nature, the more you get to indulge in thinking about life and death, because you get to witness it going on nonstop in as a cycle that just never ends in nature. For me though, what this I always think of is flowers, or when something blossoms. It's actually recently I saw some research by Rupert Sheldrake where he talks about morphogenic fields, and he's a biologist who talks a lot about biological theory. But he says in order for life to be created in a plant, they need the energy or the chemical substance that is given off by the cells that die. That's the only way you can generate more life in a plant, is from the cells that are dying. They actually create something that the life-giving cells need in order to burst, to bring life. So he hits it really on the head. He said this cycle is a never-ending process. And of course, when you're thinking of human beings, it's a lot harder because we don't see it facing us all the time. But the more, I think for me personally, the more time you spend out in nature, the more you get to understand that this death cycle is actually, it's not the end of something. It's just a part of a bigger cycle. It's a, like you said, breaking through to another realm. It's not a cease to exist. It's you exist in a whole different way of existing. And it's, to me, that's a beautiful way of looking at it. And he really hits it on the head.
Yes, I agree. That's a wonderful way to put it.
Thank you. Well, Bill, it's always a pleasure having you on for the Thought for the Day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brent. Always a pleasure to be here. Have a great day
Absolutely.
today.
Thank you. You too.